The eviction notice felt like fire in Keisha's hands as she read it for the 10th time. 3 days. That's all she had left before she and her 8-year-old daughter Amara would be thrown out onto the streets of Atlanta. The red letters on the paper seemed to mock her as she sat on the worn couch in their tiny one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills that had turned into a mountain of debt. "Mama, are we really gonna have to leave?" Amara asked, her big brown eyes filled with worry that no child should ever have to carry. She clutched her favorite doll, the one with the missing arm that Keisha had found at a thrift store last Christmas. Keisha forced a smile and pulled her daughter close. "Everything's gonna be okay, baby. Mama's gonna figure something out." But even as she said the words, she felt them crumble in her mouth like dust. She had been looking for work for 6 months since the restaurant where she worked as a waitress closed down. Every rejection letter felt like another nail in the coffin of their hopes. The apartment was cold. The heat had been shut off 2 weeks ago, and they had been sleeping under every blanket they owned. Keisha's savings account showed exactly $12.37. Not enough for groceries, not enough for rent, not enough for anything except maybe a cheap meal at the dollar store. Her phone buzzed with another text from her landlord, Mr. Peterson. The words were getting meaner each time. He wanted them out and he didn't care that they had nowhere to go. Keisha had grown up in foster care, moving from house to house until she aged out at 18. She had no family to turn to, no safety net to catch her when she fell. "I'm hungry, Mama," Amara whispered, and Keisha's heart broke a little more. They had shared a can of soup for dinner last night, and there was nothing left in the refrigerator except an old jar of pickles and some expired milk. Keisha walked to the window and looked out at the busy street below. People hurried past with their lives intact, their bills paid, their children fed. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and wondered how she had ended up here. She had worked so hard to build a life for them, but it felt like everything was falling apart no matter what she did. Her phone rang and she saw her friend Destiny's name on the screen. Destiny worked at a cleaning service downtown, and she had been helping Keisha look for work. "Girl, I got something for you," Destiny said before Keisha could even say hello. "But you ain't gonna like it." "At this point I'll take anything," Keisha said, sinking back onto the couch. "What is it?" "You know that big house up in Buckhead? The one that belongs to that mean old rich man, Mr. Whitmore? He's looking for someone to take care of his mother. Full-time live-in position. The pay is good, real good, but there's a catch." Keisha's heart jumped. Live-in meant she and Amara would have a place to stay. "What's the catch?" "Nobody wants to work for him. He's fired 12 people in the past 6 months. Word is he's cruel, demanding, and impossible to please. His mother is sick and he needs someone to care for her, but everyone who takes the job ends up quitting or getting fired within weeks." Keisha felt a spark of hope mixed with fear. "How good is the pay?" "Enough to change your life." "But Keisha, I'm warning you, this man is known for being heartless. He don't care about nobody but himself and his money. People say he treats his workers like they ain't even human." The eviction notice crinkled in Keisha's free hand. 3 days. She looked at Amara, who was trying to do homework by the light of her phone because they couldn't afford to keep the electricity on during the day. "I'll take it," she said quietly. "You sure?" "Keisha, this man has made grown folks cry. He don't care that you got a little girl. He don't care about nothing except getting his money's worth." "I'm sure. What do I need to do?" Destiny sighed. "I'll set up the interview. But girl, you better be ready for the worst. This man is gonna test you in ways you can't even imagine." After hanging up, Keisha sat in the growing darkness of their apartment. She pulled Amara close and whispered, "We might have a chance, baby. Mama might have found us a way out." But as she said it, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to walk into something that would change their lives forever. The question was whether that change would save them or destroy them completely. The next morning, Keisha stood in front of her closet, trying to find something appropriate to wear to the interview. Her best dress had a small stain on the front, and her shoes were worn down at the heels, but they would have to do. She had spent the last of their money on bus fare to get to Buckhead, the wealthy part of Atlanta where the house was located. As she rode the bus through the city, watching the neighborhoods change from run-down to pristine, Keisha felt like she was traveling to another world. The houses got bigger, the lawns got greener, and the cars got more expensive with each mile. When she finally stood in front of the Whitmore mansion, she almost turned around and went home. The house was massive, with tall columns and perfectly manicured gardens. It looked like something from a movie, not a place where real people lived. How could she possibly belong in a place like this? But then she thought about the eviction notice, about Amara's worried face, about the empty refrigerator back home. She straightened her shoulders and walked up to the front door. The woman who answered was dressed in an expensive suit and looked at Keisha like she was something unpleasant she had stepped in. You must be the applicant for the caregiver position. Mr. Whitmore will see you now. Keisha followed her through hallways lined with paintings that probably cost more than she had ever made in a year. The house was beautiful but cold, like a museum where no one actually lived. Mr. Whitmore was waiting in a study filled with dark wood and leather furniture. He was a tall, thin man in his 50s with gray hair and eyes that seemed to look right through her. When he spoke, his voice was sharp and businesslike. I'll be direct with you, Miss Johnson. I need someone to care for my mother, who has dementia. The position requires you to live here full-time. You'll be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I expect perfection. I will not tolerate mistakes, excuses, or incompetence. Do you understand? Keisha nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, sir. I understand. Good. The salary is $50,000 a year plus room and board. But let me be clear, if you disappoint me, you'll be gone immediately. I don't give second chances. $50,000 a year. It was more money than Keisha had ever dreamed of making. It would change everything for her and Amara. I have a daughter, she said quietly. She's 8 years old. Would she be able to live here with me? Mr. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. I suppose that's acceptable as long as she doesn't interfere with your duties. Can you start immediately? Keisha thought about the eviction notice, about their empty apartment, about all the nights she had lain awake wondering how she would take care of her daughter. Yes, sir. I can start today. Excellent. Mrs. Chun will show you to your quarters and introduce you to my mother. Don't disappoint me, Miss Johnson. I promise you'll regret it if you do. As Keisha followed Mrs. Chun up the grand staircase, she couldn't help but wonder what she had just gotten herself into. But for the first time in months, she felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been praying for. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore was nothing like her son. While he was cold and sharp like winter wind, she was warm and soft like summer rain. Keisha found her sitting by the window in her bedroom, a frail woman in her 70s with kind eyes and silver hair that caught the afternoon light. Hello, dear, Mrs. Whitmore said when Keisha entered the room. You must be my new angel. What's your name? I'm Keisha, ma'am. I'm here to take care of you. Mrs. Whitmore smiled, and it lit up her whole face. Keisha, that's a beautiful name. Come sit with me, child. Tell me about yourself. Keisha sat in the chair next to the window, feeling more comfortable than she had since entering the house. I have a little girl named Amara. She's 8 years old and smart as a whip. We've been going through some hard times, but I'm hoping this job will help us get back on our feet. A little girl. How wonderful. I used to have a little girl, you know. Well, she wasn't really mine, but I loved her like she was. Her name was Sarah, and she was the most precious thing. She used to come visit me every day after school. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes grew distant, and Keisha realized she was talking about something from long ago, maybe something her illness had mixed up with the present. But there was so much love in her voice that Keisha's heart ached. What happened to Sarah? Keisha asked gently. Oh, she grew up, dear. They always do. But you know what? She promised she'd come back to see me, and I believe her. Children don't lie about love. Over the next few hours, Mrs. Chin showed Keisha around the house and explained her duties. She would help Mrs. Whitmore with her meals, her medication, her baths, and keep her company. The older woman needed someone to watch over her because sometimes her mind would wander, and she would forget where she was or try to leave the house. Mr. Whitmore is very particular about his mother's care, Mrs. Chin warned. He checks on everything. If she's upset, if she's not eating, if anything goes wrong, he'll blame you. The last caregiver was fired because Mrs. Whitmore had a small bruise on her arm from bumping into a table. Keisha nodded, understanding. She had dealt with difficult bosses before, but never one who held so much power over her life. That evening, Keisha went back to her old apartment to pack their few belongings. Amara was excited about moving to the big house, but Keisha felt nervous about bringing her daughter into such a tense environment. Is it really as big as a castle, Mama? Amara asked as they rode the bus back to Buckhead with their suitcases. Even bigger, baby. But remember what I told you. We have to be very quiet and very good. The man who owns the house doesn't like noise or mess. I'll be good, Mama. I promise. Their new room was on the 3rd floor, and it was bigger than their entire old apartment. There were 2 beds, a small sitting area, and even a private bathroom. Amara ran around touching everything, amazed by the soft carpet and the thick curtains. Can I really live here, Mama? She whispered. As long as I do my job well, yes. This is our new home. The next morning, Keisha began her first full day of work. She helped Mrs. Whitmore get dressed, fixed her breakfast, and gave her the morning medication. The older woman was pleasant and chatty, telling stories about her youth and asking questions about Keisha's life. "You have such gentle hands, dear," Mrs. Whitmore said as Keisha brushed her hair. "And such a kind heart. I can tell these things, you know. I've always been good at reading people." "Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot to me. Call me Eleanor, please. We're going to be spending a lot of time together." As the days passed, Keisha found herself growing fond of the older woman. Eleanor was sweet and funny, with a quick wit that showed through even when her memory was cloudy. She loved to tell stories about her late husband, about the places they had traveled, about the garden she used to tend. But Mr. Whitmore was a different story. He would appear suddenly, checking on his mother's care with cold, critical eyes. He found fault with everything: the way Keisha arranged Eleanor's pillows, the temperature of her tea, the timing of her medication. Nothing was ever good enough. "My mother seems agitated today," he said one afternoon, his voice sharp with accusation. "What did you do wrong?" "Nothing, sir. She's just tired. Sometimes people with dementia have difficult days. Don't lecture me about my mother's condition. I know more about it than you ever will. Fix it." Keisha bit back her response and focused on staying calm. She needed this job no matter how cruel he was. But Eleanor seemed to understand what was happening. One day, after her son had left the room following another harsh criticism, she took Keisha's hand. "Don't let him break your spirit, dear. He's not as mean as he pretends to be. He's just scared." "Scared of what?" "Of losing me. Of being alone. His father died when he was young and I was all he had. Now he's watching me slip away bit by bit, and he doesn't know how to handle it. So he gets angry and takes it out on everyone around him." Keisha squeezed Eleanor's hand. "That doesn't make it right for him to treat people badly." "No, it doesn't. But understanding someone's pain can help you forgive them, even when they don't deserve it." That night, as Keisha tucked Amara into bed, her daughter asked, "Mama, why is the man so mean to you?" "Sometimes people are mean because they're hurting inside, baby. It doesn't make it okay, but it helps to understand. I don't like when he makes you sad." "I know, sweetheart. But we're safe here and we have food and a warm place to sleep. That's what matters most." As Keisha lay in bed that night, she thought about Eleanor's words. Maybe Mr. Whitmore wasn't just cruel for the sake of being cruel. Maybe he was a man in pain, lashing out because he didn't know how else to cope with losing his mother piece by piece. But understanding his pain didn't make it easier to bear his harshness. Every day felt like walking on eggshells, wondering what would set him off next. She had to be perfect, had to anticipate his every criticism before he could voice it. The only bright spot was Eleanor, who seemed to grow stronger and happier with each passing day. She loved having Keisha around, and she absolutely adored Amara, who would visit after school and tell Eleanor about her day. "You know, dear," Eleanor said one evening as Keisha helped her get ready for bed, "I haven't felt this happy in years. It's like having a family again." Keisha smiled, feeling the same way. Despite the challenges, despite Mr. Whitmore's cruelty, she was starting to feel like they belonged somewhere. For the first time in her life, she had a place that felt like home. But she had no idea that everything was about to change, and that the biggest test of her strength and courage was still to come. 3 weeks into the job, Keisha thought she was starting to understand the rhythm of the house. She had learned to anticipate Mr. Whitmore's complaints, to have answers ready for his questions, to keep Eleanor happy and healthy despite his constant criticism. But she was wrong. It started on a Tuesday morning when Eleanor seemed more confused than usual. She kept asking for someone named Sarah, becoming increasingly agitated when Keisha couldn't produce this person. "Where is she? Where's my Sarah?" Eleanor cried, tears streaming down her face. She promised she'd come back. Keisha tried everything she could think of to calm her down. She offered Eleanor her favorite tea, put on her favorite music, showed her photo albums. Nothing worked. The older woman became more upset, pacing around the room and calling out for Sarah. That's when Mr. Whitmore walked in. "What is going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through Eleanor's cries like a blade. "She's having a difficult moment, sir. Sometimes people with dementia get confused and upset. I'm trying to help her through it." "Trying? It looks to me like you're failing spectacularly. My mother is clearly distressed, and it's your job to prevent that." Eleanor continued to cry, reaching out toward the door. "Sarah. Please, I need my Sarah." Mr. Whitmore's face darkened. "This is unacceptable. You've been here 3 weeks, and you still can't handle a simple situation like this." "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't simple. Your mother is dealing with a complex medical condition, and episodes like this are part of the disease. I can't prevent them, but I can help her through them. Don't you dare speak to me about my mother's condition. I know exactly what she's dealing with, and I know when someone is incompetent. You're clearly not qualified for this job. Keisha felt her heart sink. Please, Mr. Whitmore. Give me a chance to help her. I know I can calm her down if you just give me time. Time? You've had 3 weeks. Pack your things. You're fired. The words hit Keisha like a punch to the stomach. Sir, please. I need this job. My daughter and I have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem. I need someone who can actually take care of my mother, not someone who makes her worse. Eleanor suddenly stopped crying and looked at her son with sharp, clear eyes. No. What? I said no. You will not fire this girl. She's the best caregiver I've ever had, and I won't let you destroy her life because you're too proud to admit you don't know everything. Mr. Whitmore stared at his mother in shock. Mother, you're confused. You don't understand what's happening. I understand perfectly well, David. You're being cruel to a good woman because you can't control every aspect of life. Well, I won't stand for it. If you fire Keisha, I'll refuse to eat, refuse to take my medication, refuse to cooperate with anyone else you bring in here. You can't be serious. Try me. This girl has shown me more kindness in 3 weeks than you've shown anyone in years. She cares about me, really cares, not just about doing her job but about my happiness and well-being. If you send her away, you'll be making the biggest mistake of your life. The room fell silent except for the sound of Eleanor's labored breathing. She was still upset, but now her anger was directed at her son instead of at some invisible person from her past. Mr. Whitmore looked between his mother and Keisha, his face twisted with frustration and something else, maybe fear. Fine. You can stay. But this is your last chance. One more incident like this and you're gone. He stormed out of the room, leaving Keisha alone with Eleanor. The older woman sat down heavily in her chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I'm sorry you had to see that, dear, Eleanor said quietly. My son isn't a bad man, but he's forgotten how to be kind. Thank you for standing up for me. You didn't have to do that. Of course I did. You're family now, and family protects each other. Family. The word made Keisha's eyes fill with tears. She had been alone for so long, fighting every battle by herself, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand up for her. But the confrontation with Mr. Whitmore had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. She was walking on even thinner ice now, and she knew he would be watching her every move, waiting for her to make a mistake. That evening, as she put Amara to bed, her daughter asked, Mama, are we gonna have to leave? Why would you ask that, baby? I heard shouting today. The mean man was yelling at you. Keisha sighed. She had hoped Amara hadn't heard the argument, but her daughter was smart and observant. We're not going anywhere, sweetheart. Mrs. Eleanor needs us and we need her too. I like Mrs. Eleanor. She tells me stories about when she was little, and she lets me help her with her puzzles. She likes you too, baby. She says you remind her of someone special. Who? Someone she loved very much when she was younger. Over the next few days, Keisha worked harder than ever to prove herself. She researched dementia care techniques, learned new ways to keep Eleanor calm and engaged, and anticipated every possible problem before it could arise. But Mr. Whitmore's hostility only seemed to grow. He criticized everything she did, questioned every decision she made, and made it clear that he was looking for any excuse to fire her. The stress was taking its toll. Keisha found herself lying awake at night, worried about making a mistake that would cost her and Amara their home. She was losing weight and dark circles appeared under her eyes. Eleanor noticed the change. You're pushing yourself too hard, dear. My son is being unreasonable and it's affecting your health. I'm fine, Mrs. Eleanor. I just want to do a good job. You're doing an excellent job. The best job anyone could do. But you can't sacrifice your own well-being trying to please someone who's determined to be displeased. That night, as Keisha helped Eleanor get ready for bed, the older woman took her hand. I need to tell you something, dear. Something important about Sarah. Who is Sarah, Mrs. Eleanor? Sarah was my son's girlfriend when he was in college. She was a wonderful girl, kind and smart and full of life. She used to come visit me every day, and I loved her like she was my own daughter. Keisha listened carefully, sensing that this story was important. David was going to propose to her. He had bought the ring and everything. But then she got sick. Cancer. She fought it for 2 years and I was with her through all of it. She died in my arms, calling my name. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. After she died, David changed. He became hard and cold, like he had built walls around his heart to keep the pain out. He hasn't let anyone close since then. That's why he's so mean to you, dear. You remind him of what he lost. I remind him of Sarah? Not in looks but in spirit. You have the same kind heart, the same gentle way with people. It scares him because he can't bear to lose someone he cares about again. Keisha felt a strange mix of sadness and understanding. How long ago did she die? 15 years. And he's been alone ever since, pushing away anyone who might matter to him. That night, Keisha lay in bed thinking about what Eleanor had told her. Mr. Whitmore wasn't just cruel for the sake of being cruel. He was a man who had been broken by grief and had never learned how to heal. But understanding his pain didn't make it easier to bear his treatment. She still had to walk on eggshells, still had to worry about losing her job and her home. The only difference was that now she felt sorry for him too. The next morning brought a new crisis that would test everyone's strength and change everything they thought they knew about each other. The morning started like any other. Keisha helped Eleanor with her breakfast, gave her the morning medication, and settled her in the sunroom to enjoy the garden view. But when she returned an hour later to check on her, Eleanor was gone. Panic shot through Keisha's chest like lightning. She searched the sunroom, calling Eleanor's name. She checked the bathroom, the bedroom, the hallway. Nothing. "Mrs. Eleanor," she called out, her voice echoing through the big house. "Where are you?" She ran through the first floor, checking every room, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The front door was still locked, and Mrs. Chen was in the kitchen, unaware that anything was wrong. "Have you seen Mrs. Whitmore?" Keisha asked, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "No, dear." "Isn't she in the sunroom?" Keisha ran back upstairs, checking rooms she had already searched, hoping against hope that she had missed something. But Eleanor was nowhere to be found. That's when she noticed the small door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly open and she could see stairs leading up to what must be the attic. Her heart sank. If Eleanor had gone up there and fallen. She climbed the narrow stairs, calling Eleanor's name. The attic was dusty and filled with old furniture, boxes, and forgotten memories. And there, in the corner, sitting on an old trunk with photo albums scattered around her, was Eleanor. "Oh, thank God," Keisha breathed, rushing to the older woman's side. "Mrs. Eleanor, you scared me to death. How did you get up here?" Eleanor looked up at her with tears in her eyes. "I found them, Keisha. I found Sarah's pictures." Keisha knelt beside Eleanor and saw that the photo albums were filled with pictures of a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. There were photos of her with a young Mr. Whitmore, photos of her in the garden, photos of her sitting in the same chair where Eleanor now spent her days. "She was beautiful," Keisha said softly. "She was everything to us. To me and to David. When she died, part of us died too. Mrs. Eleanor, we need to get you downstairs. These stairs are dangerous, and your son will be furious if he finds out you came up here." But even as she said it, Keisha heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Mr. Whitmore's voice boomed from below. "Where is she? Where's my mother?" He appeared at the top of the stairs, his face dark with anger. "What is the meaning of this? How did she get up here?" "I don't know, sir. I found her looking through photo albums. She must have come up while I was in the kitchen. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't even keep track of her for an hour without losing her. She could have fallen down these stairs and broken her neck." "David, stop it," Eleanor said firmly. "Don't you dare blame this girl for something that's not her fault." "Not her fault? She's supposed to be watching you. I'm not a child and I'm not a prisoner. I wanted to come up here and I did. Keisha has been nothing but wonderful to me, and I'm tired of you treating her like she's worthless." Mr. Whitmore's face was red with frustration. "You don't understand the situation, Mother. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than you are. Look at these pictures, David. Look at them and remember what it felt like to love someone." She held up a photo of him and Sarah, both of them laughing in the garden. He was so young, so happy, so different from the hard, angry man he had become. "Put that away," he said quietly. "No. You need to remember. You need to remember that love is worth the risk of loss. Sarah wouldn't want you to live like this, pushing away everyone who cares about you. You don't know what she would want. I know better than anyone. I held her hand when she died, remember? And her last words weren't about being afraid. They were about being grateful for the love she'd known. She made me promise to take care of you, to help you find happiness again." Mr. Whitmore's anger cracked, and for a moment, Keisha saw something else in his eyes, pain so deep it took her breath away. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't go through that again." "You don't have to. But you can't live in fear forever either. Look at this girl, David. Really look at her. She's not trying to take anything from you. She's trying to give you something, a chance to remember what kindness looks like. Keisha felt tears in her eyes as she watched this broken man struggle with emotions he had buried for 15 years. She understood now why he had been so cruel to her, why he had pushed her away even when she was doing her best to help his mother. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I should have been watching her more carefully." "No." Mr. Whitmore's voice was rough with emotion. "You shouldn't have to watch her like a prison guard. That's not living, that's just existing." He looked at the photos in his mother's hands and his shoulders sagged. "I thought if I could control everything, if I could make sure nothing went wrong, I could protect her. Protect myself. But you can't control everything, son. And trying to do it is making you miserable. It's making everyone around you miserable." Eleanor struggled to her feet, and both Keisha and Mr. Whitmore moved to help her. For a moment, their hands touched as they steadied her, and Keisha felt a jolt of recognition, not attraction, but understanding. "Let's get you downstairs," Mr. Whitmore said gently to his mother. "These stairs are too dangerous for you." As they made their way down, Keisha carrying the photo albums, she felt something shift in the air. The tension was still there, but it was different now, softer, more vulnerable. That evening, after Eleanor was settled in bed, Mr. Whitmore knocked on Keisha's door. She opened it to find him standing in the hallway, looking uncertain and younger than she had ever seen him. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Several apologies, actually. I've been treating you terribly, and you didn't deserve it. Thank you for saying that. I want to explain, if you'll let me. Not to excuse my behavior, but to help you understand why I've been so." He struggled for the word. "Scared?" Keisha offered. He nodded. "Scared. Angry. Lost. When Sarah died, I promised myself I would never let anyone close enough to hurt me like that again. And when you came here, when I saw how much my mother cared about you, how much you cared about her, it terrified me. I'm not trying to replace anyone, Mr. Whitmore. I just want to help. I know that now. And I want to start over, if you'll let me. I want to be better for my mother, for you, for your daughter. They both deserve better than what I've been giving them." Keisha felt hope bloom in her chest. "I'd like that." "Good. Because I have a feeling that the best parts of this story are still to come." He was right, but neither of them could have imagined just how true those words would prove to be. 6 months later, the Whitmore house felt like a completely different place. The cold, museum-like atmosphere had been replaced by something warm and alive. Laughter echoed through the halls, and the smell of home-cooked meals filled the kitchen where Eleanor insisted on helping Keisha prepare dinner each night. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had taken time, patience, and a lot of difficult conversations. But slowly, day by day, the walls that Mr. Whitmore had built around his heart began to crumble. "You know, dear," Eleanor said one evening as she and Keisha worked together in the kitchen, "I haven't seen David this happy since before Sarah died. You've given him something I thought he'd lost forever." "What's that?" "Hope. The belief that good things can happen again." Keisha smiled, stirring the pot of soup they were making. "He's given me something too. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm part of a real family." And it was true. Somewhere along the way, they had become more than employer and employee. They had become a family in the truest sense of the word, people who chose to love and care for each other despite their different backgrounds and painful pasts. Mr. Whitmore, David, as he had asked her to call him, had proven to be a completely different person once he let his guard down. He was kind, funny, and incredibly generous. He had enrolled Amara in the best school in Atlanta, bought her clothes and books and toys, and spent hours helping her with her homework. "She's brilliant," he had told Keisha one night after helping Amara with a science project. "She's going to do amazing things with her life." "She's lucky to have you in her corner," Keisha had replied, and she meant it. David had become the father figure that Amara had never had, and watching them together made Keisha's heart full. But the biggest change had been in Eleanor. With a loving, stable environment and people who truly cared about her well-being, she had flourished. Her memory was still affected by the dementia, but she had more good days than bad, and she was happier than she had been in years. "I found something today," Eleanor announced at dinner one evening, pulling out a small velvet box. "I was looking through my jewelry and I found this." She opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant engagement ring with a small diamond that sparkled in the candlelight. "That's Sarah's ring," David said quietly. "I gave it to you after she died because I couldn't bear to look at it." "Well, I think it's time it found a new home," Eleanor said, looking meaningfully at Keisha. Keisha felt her cheeks burn. "Mrs. Eleanor, I don't think." "Oh, hush. You two have been dancing around each other for months. Anyone with eyes can see that you care about each other." David cleared his throat, his face red with embarrassment. Mother, I don't think this is the right time or place. There's never a right time for love, son. It just happens when it happens. And it's happened here in this house, with these people who have become our family. Keisha looked at David across the dinner table, seeing the same uncertainty in his eyes that she felt in her heart. Over the past few months, their relationship had deepened beyond employer and employee, beyond friendship even. But neither of them had been brave enough to name what was growing between them. I think, David said carefully, that we should talk about this later, when we're not being watched by two very interested parties. Amara giggled from her seat. Mama, are you gonna marry Mr. David? Amara. Keisha scolded, but she was smiling. Well, are you? Because I think you should. He's nice to us and he makes you smile all the time now. Later that evening, after Eleanor was settled in bed and Amara was asleep, Keisha and David found themselves alone in the garden. The same garden where Sarah had once walked, where so many memories had been made. I need to tell you something, David said, his voice nervous. These past few months with you and Amara, they've been the happiest I've had in 15 years. You've brought light back into this house, into my life. David. Let me finish. I know this is complicated. I know I'm your employer and there's a power imbalance and maybe this is all wrong. But I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just gratitude or friendship. Keisha felt her heart racing. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your beautiful heart. I love watching you with my mother, seeing how gentle you are with her. I love seeing you with Amara, what an amazing mother you are. I love everything about you and I want to build a life with you if you'll have me. Tears filled Keisha's eyes. I love you too. I've been scared to say it, scared to even think it, but I do. I love you. He reached for her hands, holding them gently. I want to do this right. I want to court you properly, take you on real dates, show you off to the world. I want to adopt Amara if she'll let me, give her my name, make sure she knows she's loved and wanted. You want to adopt her? I want to be her father in every way that matters. She's already my daughter in my heart. You both are my family now, the family I never thought I'd have again. Keisha threw her arms around him and he held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling like he had finally come home. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. 1 year later, the Whitmore house was filled with people celebrating the wedding of David and Keisha. It was a small ceremony in the garden, with Eleanor in the front row beaming with pride and Amara serving as the flower girl in a dress that made her feel like a princess. I've never seen David so happy, said one of the guests, a colleague from his business. That's because he's finally learned how to live again, replied another. That woman saved him. But Keisha knew the truth was more complicated than that. They had saved each other. David had given her and Amara security, love, and a place to belong. She had given him hope, laughter, and the courage to open his heart again. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, David whispered in her ear, "Thank you for taking the job nobody wanted. Thank you for being brave enough to let us stay." Eleanor watched from her chair, tears of joy streaming down her face. Sarah would be so happy, she whispered to the evening air. She'd love them both. And in that moment, it felt like Sarah was there, blessing this new beginning, this second chance at love and happiness. 3 years later, the house was filled with even more laughter. Little Sarah Eleanor Whitmore had been born healthy and beautiful, with her father's eyes and her mother's smile. Amara, now 11 and thriving in school, was the most devoted big sister anyone could ask for. Tell me the story again, Mama, Amara asked one evening as they sat in the nursery watching baby Sarah sleep. What story, baby? The story of how we became a family. The story of how you were brave enough to take the job nobody wanted. Keisha smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. Well, it started with an eviction notice and a prayer. I was so scared, so desperate that I was willing to try anything. Even work for a mean man? Even work for a man who seemed mean but was really just hurt and scared. Sometimes the best things in life come from the scariest decisions. And now we're rich? Keisha laughed. We're rich in love, sweetheart. Money is nice, but love is what makes a family. David appeared in the doorway, Eleanor leaning on his arm. At 75, she was frielier than she had been, but her mind was still sharp most days, and her heart was full of joy. Are you telling family stories without me? Eleanor asked, settling into the rocking chair. Just the beginning, Keisha said. Would you like to tell the rest? Eleanor smiled. I'd love to. Once upon a time, there was a house that was very big and very empty. The people in it had forgotten how to love, how to laugh, how to be a family. But then one day an angel came to live with them. An angel? Amara asked, even though she had heard this story many times. The most beautiful angel with a little girl who was also an angel. And slowly, day by day, they filled the empty house with love. They healed the broken hearts and taught everyone how to be happy again. And they lived happily ever after? Amara prompted. They lived happily ever after, Eleanor confirmed. Because that's what happens when people choose love over fear, when they choose to build bridges instead of walls. David wrapped his arms around his wife and stepdaughter, looking at his mother holding his baby daughter, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. The scared, angry man who had nearly fired Keisha that first day seemed like a stranger to him now. You know what the best part of this story is? He said. What? Amara asked. It's still being written. Every day we get to add new chapters full of love and laughter and adventure. As the family sat together in the nursery, watching the sun set over the garden where so many memories had been made, Keisha thought about the journey that had brought them all together. She thought about the eviction notice that had seemed like the end of the world, about the desperate prayer for a miracle, about the courage it had taken to walk into this house and face an angry, grieving man. She thought about Eleanor's wisdom, about David's transformation, about Amara's joy at finally having a real family. She thought about the baby sleeping peacefully in her grandmother's arms, born into a world full of love and possibility. And she knew that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the hardest moments. Sometimes you have to be willing to take the job nobody wants, to face the impossible situation, to choose hope over fear. Because on the other side of that courage, on the other side of that leap of faith, might be waiting the family you never expected, the love you never dared to dream of, and the happily ever after you never thought possible. The Whitmore house was no longer empty. It was full of laughter, full of love, full of the kind of family that is built not by blood alone, but by choice, by commitment, and by the brave decision to open your heart even when it's been broken before. And as the stars came out over Atlanta, shining down on the big house with the warm lights in every window, it was clear that this was indeed a family that would live happily ever after.